Good evening and welcome to this press conference following the European Council. The meeting finished a few minutes ago and I'm very glad to welcome our three speakers, the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk. Let me immediately pass the floor to President Costa.
Good evening, dear Ursula. Dear Donald, we have concluded the last European Council during the Polish presidency. And Donald, it was a true pleasure and honor to share this first full semester in office with you. Thank you very much for your support. And the motto of your presidency was Security Europe. And you have delivered. Through agreements on strategic files, such as SAFE instrument and the European Defence Industry Programme, through two packages of sanctions against Russia, and you have implemented an ambitious agenda on competitiveness and simplification. For all that, let me say thank you very much. Today we focused on how to ensure a strong position for the European Union on the global stage. First, by working on European defence. Yesterday at NATO, 23 European Union member states decided to spend more. Today, we worked on how to spend better, investing together, more rationally, more efficiently as a team, through aggregation of demand, joint procurement, standardisation and simplification, boosting European research, European industry, European jobs for European security and prosperity. We don't need to replicate the same capabilities in each member state. We don't need to multiply by 27 all our investments in defence. What we need is efficiency and fair burden sharing. What do need is to build a common European defence system and deters aggression. And we are delivering on a first set of instruments. Joint European investment under the SAFE instrument. Increased national investment through the use of the escape clause in the Stability and Growth Pact. More private investment supported by the European Investment Bank. But this is not the end of the story. We must go further and provide the means to match our ambitions. So, today we have asked the President of the Commission, dear Ursula, and the High Representative to propose a roadmap, including on financing, ahead of our meeting in October. Europe's security is interlinked with Ukraine's security. This is why we continue to push for a just and lasting peace, while paving the way for European Union membership. On this, our objective remains firm and unchanged. The Commission's assessment is clear. Despite incredible difficult circumstances, the Ukrainian government is carrying out reforms and in impressive pace. So now is the time to intensify our work and advance on the path towards European Union accession. At the same time, we are keeping up the pressure on Russia, and we have adopted 17 packages of sanctions. And the work to deliver a new one, powerful package, is well underway. We have said it along. The full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine seriously undermines global security and international rules-based order. The respect of international law and the United Nations Charter, which was signed exactly 80 years ago today, has been the foundation of our position on Ukraine. And it's also the foundation of our position on the Middle East. The ceasefire between Israel and Iran is an important step towards restoring stability in the region. Now we need to focus on effective diplomacy. And here Europe has a role to play to ensure in a lasting, sustainable way that Iran is never allowed to acquire a nuclear weapon by fully complying with the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Any overall sustainable peace in the Middle East requires a lasting solution in Gaza. The humanitarian situation there is catastrophic and human rights are being violated. The review of Israel's compliance with our joint association agreement has confirmed this. It is an unacceptable situation. Our foreign ministers will discuss the next steps. In the meantime, we need to engage in a frank dialogue with Israel to get out of this crisis and to change the situation on the ground. And of course, we can never forget that Hamas needs to immediately free the remaining hostage. Our overarching strategy is clear: to have real peace in the Middle East. It is essential to make the two-state solution a reality. We need to make progress in this direction. Finally, to reinforce Europe's positions on the global stage, we are stepping up our internal work on improving competitiveness. First of all, with the very good work by the European Commission to develop our network on trade. And our recent bilateral summits with like-minded allies as the United Kingdom and Canada, or other key partners like South Africa or Central Asia, show that the world counts on the European Union to foster global stability and security. And the prosperity of our citizens depends on global stability and security. The upcoming summits with Moldova, Japan, China, and the countries of Latin America, the Caribbean, and the African Union in the second half of this year will give us further opportunities to promote fair and reliable trade, economic security, and to shape the clean transition. At the same time, the more competitive the European Union is, the more we will be able to shape the global economy. So we are deepening our single market and pushing to unlock the full potential of the euro, because the euro is one of the cornerstones of Europe's economic power and global leadership. This is what the leaders focus on today. Thank you very much.
Madam President.
Yes, thank you, Antonio. Let me start, dear Donald, with commending the Polish presidency as it draws to a close. Your presidency was challenging, but you delivered. You closed 37 major legislative files and reached negotiation mandates on another 18. Those are impressive figures. You advanced support to Ukraine with agreements on our 16th and 17th sanctions packages and new tariffs on Russian and Belarusian goods. You pushed forward on temporary protection, showing to our continent the power of Polish generosity and solidarity. You helped fast-track the SAFE regulation and moved forward with the European Defence Industry Programme to make our common home stronger and safer. This was a focused, efficient presidency that laid the groundwork for Denmark as of July. So, Donald, thank you very much for your leadership and for your commitment to Europe today and always. This European Council came at an important time. It follows a series of key international meetings, the G7, the EU-Canada and NATO summits, and it takes place against the backdrop of serious geopolitical and geoeconomic volatility. So it's an important moment to take stock and coordinate our answers. First, we discussed Europe's defence. Together, we have come a long way since our European Council in March. Our Defence Readiness Plan 2030 sets out a roadmap. The Rearm Europe plan lays out the tools to deliver the necessary surge of investment. 16 member states have requested the activation of the National Escape Clause, and this will allow them a substantial increase of defence expenditure without triggering the excessive deficit procedure. And under your presidency, Donald, we agreed in no time to the SAFE regulation. 71 days, it's a record, it's fantastic. 10 member states have already signalled their intention to take up loans under SAFE, and I expect more to join. But it is not just about how much we are spending, but how we are spending. We're building a genuine EU-wide market for defence equipment with scale, with interoperability and efficiency at its core. This starts with removing the barriers and introducing simplification procedures. We have our Defence Readiness Omnibus proposal. It will enable fast-track permitting for defence industry, environmental derogations, and simplified state aid rules. Now we urgently need an agreement on this omnibus. Finally, we invest in Ukraine. SAFE loans will also allow procuring together with Ukraine and from Ukraine's defence industry. The stronger Ukraine becomes, the more it can defend itself against Russia's aggression, the better it is for all of us. And beyond our borders, we're building security and defence partnerships to achieve strategic depth. 8 so far, including Japan, South Korea, UK, Canada, and soon Australia. My second point is we discussed the situation in the Middle East. Europe welcomes the announcement of a ceasefire. It must be respected by all parties. Restoring stability in the region depends on it, and it depends as well as on Iran's readiness to return to a serious and credible diplomatic process. As you said, Iran must never obtain a nuclear bomb. The negotiating table remains the only viable path forward. At the same time, we cannot lose sight of the humanitarian situation in Gaza, which remains abhorrent and unbearable. Humanitarian aid needs to reach Gaza immediately and unimpeded, at speed and at scale. Europe will keep on calling for a sustainable ceasefire and the release of hostages, leading to a permanent end of hostilities. Third, we discussed Ukraine. President Zelensky joined us per video conference. We agreed to maintain our financial support to Ukraine on all fronts, military, economically, and politically. Militarily, we recently allocated €1 billion to Ukraine's defence industry through the windfall profits from the frozen Russian assets. We are on track to reach the target of 2 million rounds of artillery for Ukraine in 2025. And we are ready to front-load the remaining 11 billion of the G7 loans because we know how important it is now for Ukraine to ask for this money. Politically, we must keep up the pressure on Russia to engage in serious talks, starting with a real ceasefire, and therefore our 18th sanctions package aims to do that. We should be in a position to have an agreed package soon. At the same time, we are also accompanying Ukraine on its EU path. Under relentless fire, Ukraine is passing reform after reform. It's impressive. And this is why the Commission defends the opening of the first cluster of negotiation. Ukraine has delivered. Now we must too, because the accession process is based on merit and Ukraine merits moving forward. Our last session on geoeconomics and competitiveness. I'm almost done. I briefed leaders on the current state of play in our trade talks with the United States. President Trump and I had a good discussion at the G7 summit in Canada. Back then, we agreed to speed up the work with a clear goal, an agreement before the 9th of July. Today, we received the latest US document for further negotiations. We are assessing it as we speak right now. So our message today is clear. We are ready for a deal. At the same time, we are preparing for the possibility that no satisfactory agreement is reached. This is why we consulted on a rebalancing list, and we will defend the European interest as needed. In short, all options remain on the table. To conclude, we had a productive summit at a decisive time, and the path onwards is clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Panie Premierze.
Dziękuję bardzo. Dziękuję za słowa uznania pod adresem polskiej prezydencji. Dziękuję wszystkim z mojej drużyny, którzy ciężko pracowali przez te długie miesiące, bardzo wymagające miesiące. Polska przejęła prezydencję w czasie wyjątkowo trudnym. A mimo to postanowiliśmy wspólnie z naszymi partnerami, że te 6 miesięcy polskiej prezydencji będą znakiem poważnego przełomu i przebudzenia Europy. I nie przesadzę, kiedy powiem, że Europa się przebudziła. I Europa dzisiaj, i to jest wyraźne w każdym aspekcie, jest gotowa do bardzo poważnego przełomu. Unia Europejska w tych trudnych czasach staje się wspólnotą, która będzie cechowała się nie idealizmem, chociaż ideały pozostają w mocy, nie iluzjami, nie pustymi nadziejami na lepszy świat, tylko Unia Europejska staje się świadomym, globalnym graczem w czasach wojen, niepokoju, konfliktów handlowych, konfliktów, wojny tuż koło naszej granicy. Nasze motto to była Europa bezpieczna i Europa prosta. Prosta, zrozumiała dla ludzi, przyjazna dla ludzi, dla obywateli, dla przedsiębiorców. I chcę, dziękując za Wasze słowa uznania, powiedzieć, że traktujemy te 6 miesięcy jako bardzo udany, ale początek. Myśmy zaczęli tak naprawdę korygować ten paradygmat europejski i nasza robota będzie miała naprawdę sens, jeśli kolejne miesiące i kolejne lata będą kontynuacją tej odważnej i dość zasadniczej zmiany. Bezpieczeństwo Europy wiadomo dlaczego, rzecz najważniejsza. Bardzo się cieszę, że nie tylko prezydencja była polska, ale także te ostatnie 2 dni, a więc finał tej prezydencji też był bardzo polski. To jest symboliczny zbieg okoliczności, że wczoraj mimo wielkich trudności i wątpliwości udało się uzyskać zgodę wszystkich członków Paktu Północnoatlantyckiego co do wysokości wydatków na zbrojenia członków NATO. I ustalono, i dotyczy to także wszystkich europejskich partnerów, że ten poziom będzie polski, to znaczy 5%. Mówię o tym z satysfakcją, bo właśnie Polska w tym roku wyda na obronę 5%. Dlatego także dzisiaj w czasie naszej debaty chyba dość, mam nadzieję, dość przekonująco tłumaczyłem naszym koleżankom i kolegom, którzy obawiali się, że te 5% na obronę to jest coś bardzo trudnego albo wręcz niemożliwego do osiągnięcia, że to jest możliwe. To jest trudne, ale to jest możliwe i to jest potrzebne. I że to nie są puste słowa, to nie są tylko deklaracje, ale polska prezydencja i polska rzeczywistość pokazuje, że to jest nie tylko potrzebne, nie tylko trudne, ale też możliwe. To jest pierwszy raz, kiedy Europa zdecydowała się uruchomić wielkie środki na rzecz swojej obrony. Też mam osobistą satysfakcję z tego powodu. Mija dokładnie ponad 20 lat, kiedy po raz pierwszy staraliśmy się formułować w moim kraju ideę wspólnych działań obronnych. 15 lat temu proponowałem partnerom w Unii Europejskiej, abyśmy zaczęli myśleć o wspólnych przedsięwzięciach już praktycznych. Też minęło 15 lat od czasu, kiedy Polska proponowała Unię energetyczną, wspólne zakupy, wspólną politykę energetyczną po to, żeby uniezależnić się od zewnętrznych dostawców surowców, przede wszystkim wobec Rosji. I wtedy to się nie udało, no mówiąc krótko. Dzisiaj mogę z satysfakcją powiedzieć, że kończąc polską prezydencję, mogę ogłosić, że właściwie wszystkie te polskie marzenia sprzed wielu lat stały się dzisiaj naprawdę realnością europejską i że Polska miała tu naprawdę bardzo duży wkład. Te 150 miliardów na europejską obronność, łatwo dostępnych, nisko oprocentowanych kredytów, to też przecież dopiero początek. Ruszył też Europejski Program Przemysłu Obronnego, EDIP. Też było trudne, wydawało się, że będziemy się dłużej kłócić na ten temat, kto będzie mógł z tego korzystać, na jakich zasadach, a jednak uzyskaliśmy tutaj porozumienie. Zmieniło się także myślenie o migracji. To nie było bezpośrednio zadanie polskiej prezydencji, ale dokładnie w czasie naszej prezydencji proponowaliśmy także twarde i zdroworozsądkowe rozwiązania. A więc przede wszystkim nastawienie się na ochronę granic zewnętrznych Unii Europejskiej. Będziemy dalej nad tym pracować. My podjęliśmy takie twarde decyzje u siebie i czekają nas jeszcze trudne miesiące i będziemy się naprawdę twardo spierać i kłócić o to, aby wszyscy w Europie zrozumieli, że jedyną metodą ograniczenia do minimum nielegalnej migracji jest skuteczna ochrona granicy zewnętrznej ze wszystkimi dostępnymi nam środkami i z koniecznymi zmianami prawnymi. Identyfikujemy te konieczności i będziemy na pewno w tę stronę przekonywać wszystkich naszych partnerów. Konkurencyjność, a więc symplifikacja, uproszczenia, deregulacja, różnie to nazywamy, ale i tu jestem bardzo zobowiązany. Droga Ursulo, naprawdę to była świetna współpraca i też uważam, że jest to początek. To też ma taki polski znak jakości, bo w tym samym czasie w Polsce podjęliśmy gigantyczny wysiłek bardzo masywnej akcji deregulacyjnej, bezprecedensowej w historii, być może w ogóle krajów, członków Unii Europejskiej. W ciągu 3 miesięcy dokonaliśmy zmian w 191 ustawach w Polsce i chcieliśmy, aby ten impet polski był także zauważalny i żeby miał wpływ na to, co dzieje się w Unii Europejskiej i dzięki waszemu zaangażowaniu za to bardzo dziękuję. To się stało też rzeczywistością europejską i wszystkie omnibusy, sposób metody, to znaczy metody, jakie przyjęliśmy, metody pracy i taki dobry duch porozumienia, głównie dzięki wam, pozwolił nam rzeczywiście z konkurencyjności i uproszczeń zrobić działanie, a nie tylko hasła i oczekiwania. Co do Ukrainy, wiadomo, polskie stanowisko było zawsze tutaj jasne. No dzisiaj z wielką satysfakcją przyjąłem też tę kolejną decyzję o przedłużeniu sankcji. Zawsze jest taka lekka obawa. Wszyscy wiemy, dlaczego się zawsze mamy powód trochę obawiać, czy będzie jednomyślność na rzecz przedłużenia sankcji. I właściwie zawsze udaje się jednak ją uzyskać. Dzisiaj też się udało. No, mamy jeszcze przed sobą decyzję o 18 pakiecie dodatkowych sankcji. Wczoraj długo rozmawiałem między innymi z prezydentem Zeleńskim, też po jego spotkaniu z prezydentem Trumpem i wszyscy odnieśliśmy wrażenie, że bardziej realna stała się szansa znowu solidarnych akcji Europy i Stanów Zjednoczonych, jeśli chodzi o sankcje, politykę wobec Rosji i wsparcie dla Ukrainy. To też dla mnie bardzo ważny sygnał i taki, może jeszcze na pewno nie happy end, ale taki dobry sygnał na zakończenie polskiej prezydencji, że nasza solidarność z walczącą Ukrainą stała się też normą. Osobiście dla mnie, jestem z Gdańska, Bałtyk jest dla mnie moim morzem, to jest mój dom. Bardzo się cieszę też, że w czasie naszej prezydencji udało się bardzo zintensyfikować współpracę państw bałtyckich i mamy tutaj na uwadze konkretne decyzje, które ograniczą ryzyka związane z tak zwaną flotą cieni. To Shadow Fleet to jest nie tylko zagrożenie dla naszej infrastruktury na Bałtyku, ale to może być tak, że jest już gigantyczne zagrożenie środowiskowe, ponieważ ta flota cieni to często są tankowce, statki, które do niczego się nie nadają tak naprawdę i stanowią wielkie zagrożenie dla środowiska naturalnego. Bardzo się cieszę, że udało się zbudować taką determinację i pełną solidarność państw basenu Morza Bałtyckiego i będziemy kontynuować oczywiście naszą pracę w tej kwestii. No, można by pewnie godzinami mówić o tym, co się udało przez te 6 miesięcy. Można by też pewnie przez niezłą godzinę mówić, co nie wyszło. Na tym zakończę. Jestem też bardzo zadowolony z tego, że duńska prezydencja jest zdeterminowana. Enough is enough, you know, it's midnight.
Midnight is over.
Cieszę się, że pani premier Fredriksen i nasi duńscy przyjaciele są gotowi kontynuować wszystkie te wątki, jakie polska prezydencja zaproponowała Unii i z takim impetem, z taką energią starała się zrealizować. Także jeszcze raz dziękuję za wszystko.
To my dziękujemy. I'll open the floor. Maria.
Thank you so much, Maria Tadeo, Grand Continent. President von der Leyen, yesterday you said something that many had been hoping you would, and that is the Pride in Budapest should go ahead, and it should go ahead without any fear, any intimidation. And you also said, I will always be your ally. So I wonder, what does being an ally mean to you? Would you go? Do you believe European officials should go and show support? And what happens if there is indeed intimidation on Saturday? What measures would you take against Viktor Orban? Thank you. And then question for President Costa. Today in the conclusions, Article 2 was mentioned. That is important, it is significant, but we're seeing there's real difficulties among member states when it comes to taking action on Israel. I wonder whether you're disappointed and how would you do it differently. And for President, just very quickly, Prime Minister Tusk, yesterday there was a lot of debate about whether or not Donald Trump is the daddy of NATO. Did you feel you were the daddy of this presidency?
Ladies first.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to reiterate my call to the Hungarian authorities to allow the Budapest Pride to go ahead this Saturday. It is important that it goes ahead without fear of any criminal or administrative sanctions against the organizers or participants. The right to gather peacefully is a fundamental right. It must be upheld in all member states. So to criminalize the organization of the Pride or to impose fines on participants would go against everything we believe as a European Union. Our union is one of equality and non-discrimination. These are our core values enshrined in our treaties, and they must be respected at all times across the European Union.
On Israel, as you know, Israel is a friend, but with friends we need to be frank and open and clear. We have an association agreement, and in the terms of this association agreement, on Article 2, both parts need to respect some values. Nobody can ignore what we watch on TV and what we read in the press. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is completely unacceptable, and that's the reason because the High Representative asks an assessment in the terms of Article 2 of the Association Agreement. The report is very clear. They are a systematic violation by Israel of human rights in Gaza. We took note of this report, and we tasked the High Representative in the Minister of Foreign Affairs Council take decisions and to approve the next step. In the meantime, we will talk with Israel, and we will repeat again and again that Israel should immediately accept the ceasefire and the blockage to the humanitarian aid and full respect the human rights in Gaza and stop also the illegal new settlements in the West Bank.
As you know, my name is Donald, and but maybe I will surprise you. But maybe I will surprise you. But my father's name was also Donald. It's enough, I think. It's one daddy is enough for sure. It's especially with the same name.
Okay, thank you. The next question will go to Susana.
Thank you, Susana Fresh with SICN Expresso Portugal. President von der Leyen, in Canada recently you said that you're going to look into the humanitarian aid for Gaza, and so far the European Commission, you yourself, you have announced 170 million in humanitarian aid for Gaza. 50 million were announced just in May, so 1 month ago. I would like to understand how much of this has already gone into Gaza. Can you give us a figure, a picture of it? Para o Presidente do Conselho Europeu em português, se puder.
Vou tentar perceber.
Como é que acabou de dizer que a situação é inaceitável, que Israel está a violar os direitos humanos? Como é que se justifica que a União Europeia, sendo o maior parceiro comercial de Israel, não consiga garantir que a ajuda humanitária entre em Gaza, não consiga pressionar Israel? Diz que vai continuar a falar, mas até agora as palavras pouco efeitos tiveram. Eu pergunto-lhe se a União Europeia é impotente face a Israel.
So I cannot give you the exact figure. I can ask the services. Perhaps tomorrow we have this figure, but I don't know it from the top of my head. What I know is that the European Union is the largest provider of humanitarian aid to Gaza. We are the largest provider of support to UNRWA, and we are the largest provider of the support of the Palestinian Authority. So this is what I can tell you, but we will check whether we have a figure. So we all know that humanitarian aid is not going into Gaza. I cannot give you the figure that you asked for, but it is clear that from all the reports and all the pictures that we have, humanitarian aid is not going sufficiently into Gaza, way not sufficiently.
Bom, a evolução. Okay, I will answer also in Portuguese, the Portuguese question. A evolução da posição da União Europeia demonstra bem o que tem sido a evolução desta situação. A seguir ao ataque terrorista do Hamas em 8 de outubro, fomos unânimes a condenar imediatamente o ataque e a reconhecer unanimemente o direito de Israel à legítima defesa, incluindo fora do seu próprio território. E durante muitos meses mantivemos este apoio à ação de Israel. Há um momento a partir do qual a situação mudou. Durante algum tempo, tendo a situação mudado, não foi possível a 27 termos um entendimento e uma posição comum sobre o que estava a acontecer em Gaza. Como sabemos, somos uma União plural, onde há diferentes políticas nacionais e diferentes visões nacionais. E devemos respeitá-lo, porque a riqueza da nossa União resulta precisamente dessa diversidade. O que foi acontecendo ao longo dos meses é que se foi tornando cada vez mais insuportável aquilo que todos víamos. E da situação em que não era possível tomar a decisão a 27, passámos à situação em que era possível tomar uma decisão a 27. E a decisão que foi tomada a 27 foi, nos termos do artigo 2º do Acordo de Associação, a alta representante devia apresentar um relatório sobre qual era a situação do respeito pelos direitos humanos em Gaza. E esse facto é muito importante, porque pela primeira vez os 27 decidiram agir e agir nos termos do artigo 2º do Acordo de Associação. Segundo momento importante, o relatório foi feito com dados objetivos por peritos internacionais. E o relatório é muito claro nas suas conclusões. E perante esse relatório, a União não pode ficar impassível. E, portanto, o relatório foi-nos hoje apresentado e aquilo que segue é que, naturalmente, na próxima reunião de ministros dos negócios estrangeiros, o Conselho vai ter que tomar decisões sobre o que fazer. Entretanto, não devemos estar impávidos e devemos dialogar com Israel e confrontar Israel com os dados objetivos do relatório e procurar que Israel faça aquilo que tem que fazer. Aceitar o cessar-fogo, permitir a ajuda humanitária chegue à população de Gaza, assegurar que terminam os novos colonizados ilegais na Cisjordânia. Bom, ao mesmo tempo, continuamos, obviamente, a dizer que o Hamas tem que, de forma incondicional, libertar os reféns. Mas, portanto, nós estamos a agir e estamos a agir nos termos daquilo que é o nosso acordo com Israel. Porque o respeito do direito internacional é respeitar a Carta das Nações Unidas, mas é também respeitar os acordos bilaterais. É isso que estamos a fazer e é no quadro dessa relação bilateral que iremos agir com Israel.
Thank you. I'll take a question from Andrzej.
Hello, Andrzej Wyrwiński, Polsat News. Mr. President, I have a question about money. Last year, the US spent twice as much as all NATO members combined. 800 million euro is not enough to fill this gap. So, do you have an idea how to fill this gap? Mr. President, do you believe that member countries are ready for honest conversation about when we have to find some savings to deliver our 5% commitment? And panie premierze, pytanie po polsku. Mówił pan dzisiaj o tym, że miał pan wrażenie, że udało się przekonać sojuszników do tego 5% progu. Nie obawia się pan jednak, że mamy powtórkę z historii, czyli z 2%. Wciąż nie wypełniliśmy zobowiązania sprzed ponad 10 lat.
Well, first of all, the 800 billion is not all the amount that the member states will spend. 800 billion is 150 billion of the SAFE program, and the rest is all amount that the member states can use if they use completely the escape clause. But on top of this, the member states have their own commitments and their own defense expenditure. And allow me to say something very important. The commitment took in 2014 is to reach 2% by 2024. And last year, in 2024, on the average of the 23 member states of the European Union who are allies in NATO, on average, they reach already the 2%. Of course, with a great disparity. Poland is almost 5%, others less than 2%. But on average, the 23 member states who are allies in NATO reach the target agreed 10 years ago.
Who next?
He asked Mr. President. So there's a clear distinction.
Jako premier polskiego rządu jestem odpowiedzialny za skuteczne wydanie naszych pieniędzy na nasze zbrojenia. I tu, tak jak wszyscy wiedzą, Polska jest wzorem do naśladowania. Ta średnia do tej pory europejska oczywiście nie jest zadowalająca. Są kraje, które osiągają niezły poziom wydatków, na przykład Grecja. Są kraje, które ciągle bronią się rękami i nogami przed zwiększeniem wydatków, lekceważąc moim zdaniem trochę zagrożenie tylko dlatego, że leżą daleko od Rosji. Ale ja bym dzisiaj nie szukał dziury w całym. Wiadomo, że to zajmie trochę czasu. Nie chodzi tylko o to, żeby przyjąć na siebie zobowiązanie o tych 5%, a żeby być dokładnym 3,5 plus 1,5 na wydatki około zbrojeniowe. I część państw mówi, że nie jest przygotowana do wydania tych pieniędzy, bo nie bardzo by nawet wiedziała, na co może wydać. Szczególnie, że w Europie, i to rozumiem, jest ta wielka ochota, aby wydawać europejskie pieniądze na europejską broń, europejskie instalacje, europejskie technologie, tak żeby te pieniądze nie tylko służyły obronności, ale też żeby wpływały na rozwój gospodarczy Europy. Więc ja nie byłem jakoś zdenerwowany czy poirytowany, że nie wszyscy entuzjastycznie podeszli do tej obligacji, do tego zobowiązania na poziomie 5%, ale no wiecie, będziemy się wszyscy nawzajem pilnować. I wydaje się, że wreszcie dotarło do wszystkich, że stanowisko prezydenta Trumpa i administracji waszyngtońskiej, stanowisko jednoznaczne, że skończyły się takie wojskowe wakacje dla Europy i że Europa musi przyjąć na siebie dużo więcej obowiązków i odpowiedzialności za własne bezpieczeństwo. I tak naprawdę to jest chyba najpoważniejszy argument i ja wierzę w skuteczność tego argumentu. Żyjemy w czasach bardzo poważnych zagrożeń. Europa nie może być bezbronna i wszyscy to chyba już naprawdę zrozumieli. Nawet jeśli nie każdy da radę w odpowiednim czasie wypełnić ten poziom 5%, to fakt, że to ruszyło do przodu i to w sposób masywny, jest naprawdę momentem przełomowym. Mówię o tym nie dlatego, że to jest moja zasługa. Przecież wiadomo, kogo posłuchali. No, mojego imiennika, ale nie... Ale przykład Polski też ma znaczenie, moim zdaniem takie zachęcające innych do podjęcia tego wysiłku.
I decided to say something. Just perfect, I can continue where you left. For the calculation, I think it's important to know that we have in these 800 billion, 650 billion, the national escape clause, so each member state can use it. And if you calculate this spent over 4 years, together with the 150 billion of SAFE, joint procurement, it's an increase of at least 1.5%. You said rightly so that on average the member states were by 2%. You add the 1.5% potentially for the next 4 years, so you have quite a sum already. I want to emphasize here, and this is even more important, how we spend the money, because it's capability that we need. So if you spend a lot of money on a small amount of capabilities, you have not won a lot. If the industry is really growing at scale, if it is innovative, if we have an industry like in Ukraine, then you get much more capabilities for the same amount of money. And therefore, the SAFE instrument is the important one for the working together, because SAFE means joint procurement. So several member states can join one contract for longer term. For example, to develop an air defense shield for the European Union, or for example, to develop a defense cloud. All things no member state could do on its own, but there needs to be the financial incentive to do it together. And therefore, this combination of you have the national money from the national escape clause, and there's the potential for joint procurement, makes the difference in the approach how we really turn this huge amount of money into capabilities that are needed here. Capabilities, my last sentence on that one, where we align very strongly with the capability gap of NATO, because for me it's important that we're not redundant, but that we are very strongly aligned. Also, this also goes for the norms and standards that NATO has. It is absolute paramount that we are aligned with NATO on that matter.
We'll take one final question. Henry.
Henry Foy, Financial Times. Madam President, a few moments ago, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz just told reporters that at this council you floated the idea of formulating a European-led WTO, an alternative to the WTO.
What?
A European alternative to the World Trade Organization. Yes. Can you tell us how that would work? And would the United States of America be invited to participate? And to President Costa and to Prime Minister Tusk, having seen tonight what Donald Trump is offering, do you think that Madame von der Leyen should accept a quick, bad deal, or hold her nerve and get into a possible trade war for a better deal? Thank you.
So, I take that part.
Yeah. Good luck.
We have a good division of labor. Indeed, I presented to the European Council the different possibilities and options that we have now with many other countries that want to do free trade agreements. You're familiar with these. What I also presented is, for me, the most attractive and interesting part is that the CPTPP, so the Asian countries, want to have a structured cooperation with the European Union, and the European Union want the same. And therefore, I said that we can think about this as a beginning of redesigning the WTO, of course understanding what should be reformed for the positive in WTO, so not repeating mistakes that might have been done in WTO, but to show to the world that free trade with a large number of countries is possible on a rules-based foundation. And this is a project where I think we should really engage on, because CPTPP and the European Union, this is mighty. So first of all, it's the European Union that has to manage that with CPTPP. As far as I understand, the Americans left at a certain point the CPTPP.
Well, about the concrete proposal, as Madam President said, is under a session in the European Commission. Then we cannot, of course, comment this concrete proposal. But what I can say is, look, an agreement is always better than a conflict, and zero tariffs is always better than one tariff. And uncertainty is the worst thing for our economy, and we need to come to give certainty to our investors, to our workers, to our companies, as soon as possible.
We all agreed, I think, that we should be as a true community. We have to be very innovative if needed, creative, smart, sometimes maybe unpredictable, as our friends from the other side of the Atlantic. And I'm absolutely sure that we know much more and we are much better prepared for discussions and negotiations with our American partners. And I think all of us are aware about this new method, how to negotiate and how to talk about trade and our common relations, with goodwill and with the awareness that the United States is and will be the closest partner, and there's no alternative for transatlantic cooperation. But we have to be similar to our partners in some sense.
And if you allow me just to add a phrase, and of course we have full confidence in the ability of the European Commission to lead these negotiations beyond the member states.
So
thank you.
The press conference is over.
Yes, of course, with these nice words.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.